Bodybuilding Coomber Radio, episode number 109. Now, I can't guarantee I bring much sunshine in your life today, but the guy on the other side of the line is in a very sunny place, is from a very cool part of the world called San Francisco, which is apparently where a lot of cool people happen, tech happens, but all you need to know is this guy is a bit of a nutritional legend, especially in some of the old school worlds, a bit of the underground bodybuilding world, but we'll get into that. Anyway, at the end of the line, I have Mr. Nate Miyaki. Hello.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Now, have I pronounced your second name properly?
Miyaki, yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
Woo.
It's like Mr. Miyagi, but with a K instead of the G.
Yeah. I'd be honest, if I was you, I would draw some good analogies from Mr. Miyagi because, well, he's a legend.
He is an absolute legend. I live my whole life based on his principles, so
to be honest, I'd probably claim he was my dad.
Yeah, you know what? Hey, my dad kind of looked a little bit like him. Actually, my dad is 100% Japanese, so there you go.
So you're part Japanese, part
Irish. My mom is 100% Irish, so I'm an interesting mix there. 100% each way, and I'm 50-50.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed you were half Irish. But Nate, for people that don't know who you are, who on earth are you? What is the story?
Sure. I guess I'll try to be short. Athletic background, was a football player and sprinter, and then I got more into kind of martial arts, capoeira. Ended up doing stunts and pro wrestling for a while, and then have done some natural bodybuilding competitions and physique-based stuff, fitness modeling stuff. And then on the educational and career side, post-bac studies in kinesiology, bunch of different nutrition and training certs. Been running a training business for about 15 years. And then on the writing side of things, kind of write for a lot of the different magazines out here. Men's Fitness, Muscle and Fitness. I did some stuff with Men's Fitness UK too. T-Nation, bodybuilding.com, all those places. So a little bit of hodgepodge of things because I get bored very easily. So I try to mix it up and stay interested.
Nice. I was fully aware of your work as kind of a nutritionist, as a coach, your background, but I had no idea about the kind of training side of your business. Is that kind of from an educational point of view in like the health and fitness field still?
I'm sorry. In terms of my education, is that what you were asking?
No, you said the training side of your business. Is that training?
Yeah. So yeah, I can't just sit and write at a computer all day. I get bored very easily. So I've kept the training side of my business going. I mean, that's all I did for like 10 years was I was working 50 hours a week training people. But I've scaled that down to do more writing and work online. But I still train about 20 hours a week with people in the gym just because, I like it. I work with, some very cool people and it keeps me sharp, keeps me learning not just about, I think too many coaches just focus on the physiology of things and they're not working in the real world. So they don't see how that, applies in the real world. So it keeps me sharp on the sort of practical application side of things, the psychology side of things, whether these articles and these books we're putting out are actually working in the real world. So I like to keep that side of my business going just for practical experience, basically.
No, that's awesome.
And it's a good time. It's you make good friends and you keep life interesting and you learn from them. You learn a lot from your clients too.
Yeah, of course. Now, I think my earliest influence of your work and reading your work, I think must have been in T-Nation quite some time ago. I was a big fan of T-Nation when I was younger. T-Nation's got a huge audience. I'll be brutally honest, I kind of stopped reading some of their work when it kind of felt like it was pushing the marketing side of it a bit too much in terms of what they were trying to deliver. Do you still write for T-Nation?
I don't really know what's going on with my work with T-Nation. Actually, I worked with an editor there who has since left, And, I still submit articles once in a while, and some of them get published, some of them don't. But yeah, I know I will never say anything bad about T Nation because they're the ones who gave me my first shot. And so, I'm always grateful for them, and it kind of got my name and work out there. So, but yeah, I haven't been writing for them as much. Honestly, I've tried to focus mostly on my own blog and stuff, just because, a lot of our industry is really just, it's too much on just, it's glorified marketing material in the end. And so you don't really get to say the things you really want to say, and your kind of work is, pushed off in different directions. So I've kind of just focused more on my own blog lately, writing for spots here and there. But, if someone wants me to write stuff I don't believe, I don't write it. So sometimes that inhibits me from getting as many writing jobs as I probably could.
Sure. Well, I posted something on Facebook, as I do with all the guests that I'm going to have on my show, and I say, hey, look, is there some things you want to know about? And I've got a load of questions from these people, but one of the comments was from Tom Bainbridge, and I equal his sentiments in that you were probably one of the first guys, or it felt like it, to take what seemed like a moderate approach to health and fitness with your writing on T Nation, whereas some of the articles and the directions were quite, extreme. They always had a real point to prove. Would you say a lot of your nutrition and opinion and theory now has a lot more balance to it than maybe, let's say, the opinions of your younger self?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And really, I think I think, extremes are what sell, but it's usually where all the magic is in moderation. So that's where all the magic lies. That's where long-term sustainable results happen. But it's just that sort of, extremes work in marketing and all that stuff. So also the biggest thing that I've realized is that there is no one universal diet. So that's, I think, where the problem lies in our industry is we try to slot everyone into one system, right? So low carb, a high carb, or whatever. And so, sometimes the extremes work for people, but it's just about specificity and getting them in the right diet. So my plans can be extremes at times, but mostly it's those are for a certain demographic. If someone is in a disease state, for example, or someone is a high performance athlete training twice a day, well, there's those are kind of extreme scenarios. But most of my plans are very moderate, and I just think that's where the magic lies. And yeah, my plans have evolved over time, just based on new research. And I think if you try to get trapped in one system, you're not evolving as a coach, and you're not getting better, and you're not open to changing. That's problematic, and you're doing yourself and your clients a disservice.
Nice. So let's say I'm a client of yours. Talk me through part of your process with working, with a nutritional client. What steps are you going to take them through, and what do you think are the fundamentals for you as a coach to kind of get hold of right from the get-go? Yeah,
so I sort of have a hierarchy of importance that I believe works the best for the majority of people, and it's a three-part process. So it's basically like, hey, step one is to achieve any body composition goal. If we're just talking about physique or a performance goal or whatever, it's getting the numbers right first. The numbers are the most important step to change your body composition. We're talking calories, macronutrients, all that. I think they both matter. So what I'll do is I'll try to get the numbers right first. Then it's about optimizing food choices for overall health, and then also to make sticking to those numbers as easy and as seamless as possible, right? So if you're eating a bunch of refined foods and stuff like that, it's gonna be hard to stay in for example, a calorie deficit necessary for fat loss if you're not emphasizing mostly, real whole natural foods. And then it's about the diet structure, which is really, to me, is way further down the hierarchy of importance, although some of my articles have been emphasizing that. Really, it's about finding the right meal frequency and food distribution patterns that really it's all about making it practical and sustainable as possible in the real world. So to me, it's numbers are most important. Food choices are second in terms of optimizing overall health. And then three, it's finding a practical and sustainable diet structure. So we work through that hierarchy and we try to we try to tackle the highest level steps first. So what I generally have people do is just keep a food log or diary or track their food for a week, and then that in itself shows them a bunch of things, but it also gives me a bunch of information that I can then use to design something for them.
Sure. No, I completely agree. The numbers are totally important. Now the population that you coach might be a little bit more finely tuned, might be a bit more specific just because of how you've developed and the type of people that you attract. Now, if you were to work with, let's just say, the real average person off the street that wants to maybe just lose a little bit of weight, because there'll be a lot of coaches listening to this and thinking about their approach with these people. Would you still use the same approach with those people, knowing that people might not want to weigh and measure all their food and be overly kind of, we'll call it anal, about the numbers pertaining to their diet?
Yeah, no. I totally, and most of my clients now, I work with sort of entrepreneurs and busy professionals. So, it really does depend on the person. And that's why I say psychology matters, right? Physiology is one thing, psychology and adherence and application is another. So depending on the person, it might be whereas like, hey, we actually focus on food choices first because that's the easiest way to educate people. It's the easiest thing that they can do. And it just gives them, it almost auto-regulates the numbers, right? So if you get someone who's coming and eating a typical, fast food diet and we improve some food choices, emphasize protein, get them to eat a little more whole foods, well, the numbers automatically improve, right? They're dropping calories, the protein to carb ratio is better. I might focus on food choices then first and, simple food templates, just because it's a very easy educational tool, right? If you tell someone, hey, if we starting to get to the physiology of carbs and anaerobic training, they're just going to be like, whatever, dude, I don't care. I just want to just give me a diet plan. So that's when we maybe move on towards food choices and focus on that first. And then as the educational process continues, then we might start, hey, we got to get your numbers under control. And not even for like my bodybuilding clients do I have them sit there and weigh foods. It's like, dude, we can do, simple, hey, 8 ounces of protein looks like, 2 decks of cards next to it. Let's eyeball it. A cup of rice or 8-ounce potatoes looks like a closed fist, or a baseball. Like that. I try to make it even competition diets practical in the real world. So I never really get down to the point where I'm having people weigh or measure things. If they want to do it, that's fine. They're OCD, that's great. But I've never done that myself, and I never, the majority of my clients don't either.
Cool. It was important for me to hear that because sort of the message that I try and really take people through is the exact same journey in a way that you've kind of almost got to earn the right a lot of the time to be more specific about your diet. Tracking your calories and macronutrients is very important. Having a flexible approach to your nutrition is important. But also, in the first instance, you've got to understand the power of food, how it makes you feel, how it's going to lead into performance, its effect on sleep. And that comes down from choice, identifying problematic foods, and really educating the user on why they eat the foods and the effect it has on their body.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's spot on right there for sure, man.
Okay, so there's a really common saying in the fitness industry that if you want to achieve great body composition, that 80% of the effort comes down to your diet and 20% of your effort is down to the training. Now, how do you view that kind of statement, and where do you think the emphasis needs to lie for people from your perspective?
Yeah, I kind of use that rule too. It's just to give, and oftentimes arguments will happen over, high level athletes, and then, it's like, listen, it's just to get people to understand, how important their diet plan is for their body composition, because, most people come and if we look at the average person, they're the type of person who, the message they get right from the beginning is like, hey, if you want to lose weight, you got to get on a treadmill and you got to burn some calories and all these things. It's like, listen, you can't out-train a poor diet if you're trying to change your physique. So I try to get people just to understand. And even most people offline come to see me for training. And it's like, listen, I know you're coming to see me for training. I know we're going to set up the greatest, programs based on, biomechanics and kinesiology and exercise physiology science. But even the best program in the world with all of those things behind it, is only going to give you, minuscule results if you don't change your nutrition plan. So I do use that 80-20 rule just because it gets a beginner to understand how important right from the beginning that, diet is on their physique results, and not just physique, but overall health and digestive health and hormonal health and overall health and biomarkers of health, like all that stuff. It's really our diet plans that have the biggest impact on everything. So I agree with that statement. I think statistic experts will argue with it, but we're talking about, semantics at that point. I really think it's just a simple kind of numbers-based thing to give people an idea of how important diet is.
Now, as the individual, and we'll describe them as the athlete, becomes more advanced, do you think that percentage not becomes less relevant, but almost becomes more skewed in favour of the training stimulus to really stimulate changes and growth and adaptation? Actually, some real hard effort has to be put in terms of the gym, on the field, on the sports pitch, to actually stimulate growth, strength, speed, stamina, endurance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll distinguish. I tend to distinguish the two just because I've done both. I've trained as a performance athlete, and I've also trained as a physique athlete, if you want to call it that. It's not really athlete, but whatever. You know what I mean? But yeah. So in performance, the training is by far more important. I think especially because there's plenty of examples of athletes who can perform great while eating a crappy diet. And it's really, heart and determination and training and all that stuff that matters more. For physique, I still think it's the majority is diet based. So, but yeah, obviously if you're at the highest levels, it's 100% for both. I mean, if you want to be elite, everything's got to be on point, right? So your diet, your training, all of that, your mindset even. So yeah, as you get higher and higher into the upper echelon of athletics, it all matters, and it all matters 100%. What we're talking about with 80% diet is generally more the beginner and intermediate demographics, right?
Nice. No, I think they're good boundaries to kind of create for people because like everything, nutrition and health and performance is a journey, and you need to know when to get more specific about different things and delve into different areas, because a set of principles that you follow now that we might talk about won't become relevant in a year's time, but will need to shift to accommodate your new goals and the way that you want to take your training and body.
Absolutely. It's about specificity. People understand that more on the athletic side of things, right? Hey, if you're gonna, training for boxing, if you're a boxer, it's different. Your training program needs to be different than if you're a marathon runner, than if you're a bodybuilder, than if you're an MMA athlete, all of that stuff. People don't seem to use that principle of specificity in nutrition, and it absolutely is applicable too. I mean, the diet of someone who is sedentary, office worker, insulin resistant, and, just getting started out trying to improve their health needs to be much different than, someone who's using their diet plan to maximize fat loss and lean muscle retention and get ready for a bodybuilding show, is different than someone who is using their nutrition plan to, optimize performance and perform at the highest levels on the field or in the ring. So, the specificity needs to happen in the nutrition realm too. So we just need to match the diet to the person's, metabolic condition and, physique or performance goals.
Nice. On the money. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to get a sort of 3-word answer to this question or not. We'll see. Another popular train of thought in fitness is that when you get lean, you end up getting weak, or if being on a diet makes your strength go down. Can we essentially maintain strength while being on a diet at the same time?
Yeah, I think up to a certain point, you can. I think when you get down into the real, say for a bodybuilder, I think the goal is different, right? So the goal is how you look, not necessarily how you perform. So at some point, I think, especially if you're doing it naturally, when you reach, 4 or 5% body fat, you're not going to be at your strongest because you're going to be in your, low calorie levels. You're going to be somewhat carb depleted probably, right? But that's really at the low. I think you can be really fit and really lean while still having your strength. if you do your nutrition plan right. To me, that's where I've seen, keeping some carbs in the diet, while in a calorie deficit, better fuels anaerobic training so you can maintain some more of that strength if you don't go too low in carbs. But at some point, you're gonna lose some strength if you're trying to get in, just say, bodybuilding shredded condition, doing it naturally. But I think for the most part, for most athletes, they can look really good, pretty lean, and be performing at near max levels if they do their diet plans right. That's to me where calories matter, but macronutrients matter. The sort of physical demands of your sport and exercise physiology principles behind your sport. That's to me where I've seen where people start, integrating some carbs back in their diet for anaerobic training. Their strength levels go up while they stay in that calorie deficit, and then they're staying just as lean, but they're stronger. So I think you have to do your macros right.
Do you think
to get those benefits, if that makes sense? Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, it's good. Do you think the two big mistakes people make then is too severe a calorie deficit and taking the carbs out of the diet as well?
Yep, I think that's spot on. I think sometimes maybe we're looking for the quick fix, right? So we cut calories too much too quickly. So I prefer more, smaller cuts, say 10%, 15%, stuff like that. And then definitely the trend I've seen in the low carb era is that, low carb is great. Don't get me wrong. That's where I say we can't slot everyone into one diet. I mean, I've used, relatively low carb diets, when I speak at sort of corporate wellness programs, and the people are predominantly sedentary, or they're only doing, low intensity work, and are like, listen, low carb diets work wonders for that demographic, and biomarkers of health improve, insulin sensitivity improves, blood sugar control improves, they lose a bunch of weight, but it's not necessarily transferable to a highly athletic demographic, sport performance athletes, physique athletes, things like that. I think that's been the biggest thing I've seen is when people just go to no carb diets just because they work for sedentary people, and there's a lot of research on that. I think they tend to cut carbs too low too quickly without even really assessing why they're doing that. And so, yes, it's definitely been like people who can keep – I've heard a phrase this way, keep carbs as high as possible while still losing weight and body fat. That's where I've seen people maintain their strength and performance while losing body fat, essentially.
No, I'd agree. But that's some of the extremism that we have to deal with in the fitness industry, that
sure.
People believe that they might have to be low carb to lose fat, or they have to be in said state to lose fat, and it's not true. These things can be cut and diced and mixed up in a plethora of ways that fits the individual, essentially. Now, this question could be answered in many different ways,
sure.
And go for it however you want. Now, with your work and the journey that I've been on with your work, you've kind of batted around both the paleo circles and the bodybuilding circles for some time now. Now, some people would say that these kind of circles of influence are kind of exclusive to one another, and they're different trains of thoughts, and they have different beliefs. Now, what can we learn as individuals listening to this podcast from both the paleo world and the bodybuilding world when it comes to health, performance, and body composition?
Sure. That's the thing is, I think if you don't get caught up in dogma, I think you can learn a lot from both circles. And I think what I've seen with people who are flexible is, they can learn from each other a lot, quite a bit. I think from what I've learned, what I've taken from both, we can do that. And then I've seen other coaches do the same, is that, I think paleo people can learn a lot from bodybuilders in terms of optimizing numbers. So I see in the paleo community, hey, let's get some of these problematic foods out of the diet that are causing digestive stress and, insulin resistance and things like that. But then they don't pay any attention to say numbers, for example. So people are like, hey, I've cut out, grains and sugar and, but I'm eating unlimited protein and fat and I'm not losing weight. What's the problem? Well, it's because you're in a calorie surplus and, calories still matter. And hey, let's drop some of the added fats down and get you in a slight deficit, and then boom, they start losing weight. So I think on the paleo side of things, they can learn a lot from sort of sports nutrition, bodybuilding nutrition, things like that. And also like, hey, maybe you don't need to cut carbs that low and suffer from some of the drawbacks of low carb diets combined with anaerobic training, like muscle loss, poor performance, low testosterone, things like that. The bodybuilding community, I think, goes too far in the like if it fits your macronutrients and extreme versions of that. So there's sane, applicable versions of that, and then there's, hey, just eat whey protein and Pop-Tarts and you're going to get in great shape. You can, but the problem with that is then you're compromising your health, your long-term health, insulin sensitivity, things like the community. They can learn a lot from, optimizing food choices for overall health and long-term health. Anyone can eat crap for, 6 weeks and still have good biomarkers of health. It's what happens. It's your diet over your lifetime that has the biggest impacts on those types of things. So to sum it up, I think, we can learn a lot in terms of, targeted numbers for physique-based results from the bodybuilding community. And I think we can learn a lot from sort of good food choices and optimizing overall health from the paleo community. I don't think they're mutually exclusive if you're not dogmatic and you're flexible enough to, again, match the diet to the specific person and their metabolic condition and their performance and physique goals. I hope that made sense.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think they are the best two attributes out of both those systems of thinking. And if we can, as practitioners, take both the value of both those trains of thoughts, I think we'll be very good practitioners all round, and we'll handle our diet ourselves way, way better. And I think it makes a nice segue into one of the other questions I've got, which was asked on Facebook by Rob Zand. He sort of mentions that your views seem to have changed slightly over the years, and that you, in your writing, seem to have picked up and supported the idea of flexible dieting a bit more. Why has this kind of come about? How has your journey evolved in that sense with flexible dieting and maybe bridging the gaps of, paleo, natural health, bodybuilding, sports nutrition?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not one of these guys who will try to defend a position that has changed, over time. I try to evolve and learn every day. So sometimes my approach has never changed. It's some of the details maybe have. Flexible dieting, I've always kind of said this. People have missed this. I have a certain template that I recommend as a starting point, but I've always said, hey, that's just what I've come to believe based on research and experience. Regardless of that, I believe in terms of, I think he was talking about food choices. Regardless of what I say as a starting template, the reality is to figure out what works best for you, you have to test, assess in the real world. And so sometimes what I'll recommend for people in terms of food choices is like, hey, cut a food out for 2 weeks, add it back in, see how you look and feel, assess. You'll find what works best for you. And then I've just gotten a little bit more putting that more at the forefront, I guess, over time to find a sustainable plan for someone. Because I was finding that it was like, hey, eat just an island style diet where it's just basically these foods, and people are like, yeah, it's great, works for 2 weeks, but I want to have a sandwich, and it's like, okay, like fine, just as long as you hit your numbers, then you can be a little more flexible with the food choices, and test and assess to see what works best for you, and then that's where I've gotten a little bit. Maybe my approach has evolved over time to make it more person-specific than template-specific, although I still think templates give people a good starting point from which then to go off and then work more on their own to find what works best as a long-term sustainable plan for them. I think that's maybe what he was talking about in terms of my evolution. I've always believed that. I maybe didn't highlight it as much.
Okay, so this is a very similar question, but kind of, again, noted to your writing previously. Tom Bainbridge on Facebook says, looking back at some of your older articles where you describe some carb sources as ass fattening, have your views now changed as you seem to have adopted a more flexible dieting approach mindset, or do you still consider some foods as off limits for everyone?
Yeah, that's a good example of Well, one, I sometimes when the writing leaves my hand, it's again edited in a way to make it maybe sound more extreme than it actually is. So again, when I look at food choices, I look at the research and the experience I've seen in terms of like, what are their impacts on overall health? If we're just talking about physique results, you can get results again, like on any numbers. That's where I think there's some truth to if it fits your macronutrients. You can diet on whatever you want. If you're hitting the optimal calories and macros, you'll get great physique results. To me, I look at food choices more in terms of, optimizing them for overall health. So I still do believe that's where I still pull from a lot of the paleo research and theory is that, listen, there's things in foods that, anti-nutrients grain, for example, that can inhibit sort of mineral and amino acid absorption, can cause GI distress, things like that. So I still do believe that there are certain foods that are not the best. Now, maybe I was a little more extreme in the past and saying, don't ever eat those foods, they're the devil. But, probably backed off a little bit on that and said, hey, again, for the most part, 80% of the time, here's what I think you should do. 20% of the time, you do whatever you want. And I think that's a good balance for long-term sustainability. So, I still do believe there's a good baseline template to start with. But, you got to make it practical in the real world. So, if you're one of those people who's like, well, if I think about it in black and white, I'm never going to stick to it. Don't do that. Have some gray areas, have some times where you want to eat the food you want. But 80% of the time, stick to the ideal food choices. I still do believe in that, and I always will.
No, and I agree with you. I've been meaning to write a blog on this for a while. It's on my to-write blog list, and the fact that I've been thinking recently about kind of my maturity in the industry almost, and how my opinions evolved as I've kind of matured with both my knowledge and, just age and overall experience. And I would say it's not necessarily a case that I've kind of learnt more. I have learnt more, but through experience and sort of essentially growing up and maturing, I've kind of learnt that there are lots of different people that want to do things lots of different ways. There's lots of different methods, and there's lots of different reasons of why people do things. And when I was very young, essentially, health and nutrition was almost very black and white. Like, you needed to do this, you needed to do that, you needed to sleep well, and these are the things, and if you can't do it, then you're doomed. And then now, as I've grown older, and, I've probably incorporated more of these things and identified with more scenarios in my life, is that I need to be way more flexible with other people, my own goals, lifestyle factors, and you end up taking way bigger doses of humble pie yourself as you mature as a coach.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's the thing is the principles are there. It's just, again, that's where working with people in the real world, you see psychology is a huge part of it. And you see how, maybe, the best physiological plans on the planet, that's one thing if we're talking about them in a classroom or a lab, but how do they work in the real world? How do they, do they get people the results that they're looking for, that they need? So as you grow as an educator, I think maybe the methods of delivery change, or, the fundamentals are there, the details sometimes change, but then the delivery also changes, and how you can best convey the message and then get people to apply it. So I couldn't agree more, man. You just grow over time as you're in this industry, and you do become more flexible. You say, okay, well, this person, you can tell just by talking with them, they're not likely to change their numbers, but they're likely to change their food choices. So boom, let's focus on that. This person over here, they won't eat a paleo style diet. But they will track their food and their numbers. So, hey, let's just take whatever they're eating, take the highest level step, the most applicable step, and say, hey, okay, let's focus on your numbers first. And, I don't care if you're eating bologna sandwiches, let's just portion control it and all, whatever. And then they get results. And then they're open up to like, oh, maybe I should improve my food choices. So you kind of just, assess the person and the demographic. And then you say, okay, how can I best help these people, while sticking to what I believe and giving them the information that I believe will help them and stuff. So I think details change, delivery changes, and you have to be flexible, and you have to always be growing as a coach if you're going to be good at what you do.
Amazing perspective, Nate. I really like it. Huge fan of your theories and what you do. I think it's very similar to mine. Mate, people need to listen to your writing. Your writing is excellent. Your blogs and stuff. Look, where do people go to find you? Where can they read your stuff? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, man. All my stuff is housed on my website blog. It's natemiyaki.com, NATEMIYAKI.com, and that's where I do everything, man. And I think that's the best way to get a hold of me, read my stuff, get in touch, and all that good stuff, man.
Wow, amazing. Nate, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. I'm a big fan of what you do too. So this has been an honor. It's been great, man.
So for everyone listening, I hope you've taken a huge amount of value from this. Nate's a guy that I've followed here and there in the industry for probably a good 8 years. Been a big fan of his writing. I had to try and count how many years I'd been in the industry and at what point I'd started reading T Nation at that point.
Right.
Me and Rachel will be back on the show next week answering your questions. So if you've got a question and you want to send it into the podcast, please email it to bencoomber@gmail.com with the subject line podcast, and your question will get in with the mix. My next guest is going to be Dr. Doug McGuff, talking about high-intensity interval training and the science behind it. But until then, it's goodbye from me. Goodbye from Nate.
See you later, guys and gals.
Stay awesome. Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode 108. Now, we just went past show 104, and I was an absolute norbert and didn't even notice until one of the guests that I had on my show a couple of weeks ago when we were chatting, they were like, "Oh my God, you've been doing your podcast 2 years." And I was like, "OMG,